Hi friends, and welcome back to Reading with Isa. For today's story, we're going to be reading Oliver and Company. One spring day, a cardboard box filled with kittens was left on the sidewalk in New York City. The kittens were very cute, and all were adopted quickly, except for a fluffy little orange one. Alone, scared, and very hungry, the kitten stuck his head over the edge of the box and looked around. Then he jumped out and set off to find food. Before long, some mean dogs began to chase him. He luckily escaped. Later, he smelled something delicious. Hot dogs! Dodger, a street-smart dog who was standing nearby, had smelled the hot dogs too. He came up with a plan and asked the kitten to help. In return, they would share the food. But when the kitten distracted the vendor, Dodger grabbed the meat and took off, alone. "Wait!" cried the kitten. "Half those dogs are mine!" But Dodger just laughed and kept running. He raced through alleys and over fences and finally ended up down at the docks, where he slipped into a room on a run-down barge. But there was something Dodger did not know. The kitten had followed him. Hiding up on the deck, the kitten peeked through a hole. Inside, he saw Dodger talking to a group of dogs: Tito the Chihuahua, Francis the Bulldog, Einstein the Great Dane, and a lovely hound named Rita. Dodger was busy bragging about how he had gotten the hot dogs all by himself. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. Dodger and the other dogs looked up in surprise as the little kitten fell through the ceiling. The kitten was surrounded. He was scared, and his heart was pounding. He had never been that close to so many dogs before. "I just followed this dog," he said in a shaky voice. "Relax, kid," Rita told him gently. The kitten took a deep breath. He was about to ask for his half of the hot dogs when a man walked into the room holding a box of dog biscuits. The dogs rushed over to greet him. The man's name was Fagin. He lived on the barge and took care of the dogs. Usually, he was happy-go-lucky, but now he looked sad. A car horn sounded outside. "I'll be right there," Fagin called out. Then he trudged up to see Sykes, the man in the car. Fagin owed him money, but he did not have a way to repay it. While Fagin begged for more time, Sykes' dogs, a nasty pair of Dobermans, came around the barge and tried to frighten Dodger and his gang. When the snarling Dobermans tried to corner the kitten, he reached out and scratched one of them on the nose. Fagin and the rest of the group were very impressed with the kitten's bravery and decided he could be part of the gang. After the day's excitement, everyone was tired. Fagin walked over to a chair, put his feet on a footrest, and pulled out a book. While the dogs surrounded him, the kitten curled up in Fagin's lap and purred. He had found what he was looking for: a new home and new friends. The next morning, Fagin was in a much better mood. He decided to take the gang into the city to get some money to pay Sykes. Dodger explained the plan to the kitten. While Tito snuck inside a parked limousine to try and steal the stereo, Einstein and Francis would distract the driver. The kitten would sit in the front seat of the car and be the lookout. Everything was going according to plan when, zap! Tito, who had been fiddling with the radio wires in the car, got an electric shock and set the alarm off. He and the gang fled as quickly as they could, but they left the kitten behind. The kitten wasn't alone, though. A little girl named Jenny had been sitting in the back seat. "Oh, you poor kitty," Jenny cried when she saw how scared the kitten looked. Holding him tightly, she told the driver to take them home. At home, Jenny prepared a huge bowl of food for the kitten and told him his new name was Oliver. Then she gave him a special collar and a gold identification tag. Oliver had never been happier. Meanwhile, back at the barge, Dodger and the gang were worried about their friend. The next day, they snuck into Oliver's new home while he was sleeping and took him back to the barge. But when he woke up, Oliver was sad. He had liked spending time with Jenny. Fagin, however, was not sad. Oliver's fancy collar and Fifth Avenue address made his eyes light up. "So that's where you've been," he exclaimed. Fifth Avenue was where all the rich people lived. It was a jackpot. Fagin decided to contact the family, tell them that he had their cat, and ask for money. Then he could pay Sykes back. Surrounded by his dogs, Fagin sat down and wrote a ransom letter. Then he waited for Oliver's new owners to show up. But Jenny got the note instead. When she saw that her kitten had been catnapped, she was very upset. She crept out of her house and went to save Oliver. At the dock, she soon found Fagin. "Excuse me?" she said, holding out a piggy bank filled with change. "I came to find my kitty. Somebody stole him." Fagin felt guilty about taking money from a little girl, so he gave Oliver back to her for free. But Sykes had been following Fagin. When he saw Jenny, he knew that her parents would pay a lot of money to get her back. He grabbed the girl, pulled her into his car, and sped away. Dodger and the rest of the gang had been waiting in the barge. They heard the commotion and rushed outside. Oliver looked miserable. "Don't worry," Dodger told him. "We'll get her back." Everyone agreed, and they ran towards Sykes' warehouse. When the dogs arrived, Sykes was on the phone. They quietly went inside, found Jenny, and untied her. Now, they all had to get away without being noticed. But it was too late. Sykes and his Doberman had spotted them. Running as fast as they could, Dodger and the gang slid down a ramp that led outside. Fagin was waiting for them with his scooter. Jenny and the rest of the gang jumped aboard as Sykes and his dogs followed in their car. The chase was on. Trying to lose Sykes, Fagin drove his scooter onto the subway tracks. The two vehicles bumped into one another, causing Jenny to be tossed around on the back of Fagin's scooter. Suddenly, she was thrown straight at Sykes. "Help!" she cried as the evil man pulled her inside his car. Oliver jumped into the car and bit Sykes, who let Jenny go. Fagin reached behind him and pulled her back onto the scooter. Now Oliver was in trouble. Sykes threw the kitten into the back seat and ordered his dogs to attack. Luckily, Dodger came to the rescue. Together, the pair fought off the mean dogs and jumped safely from the speeding car, right before it went flying off a bridge. Jenny was overjoyed that Oliver was okay. She was never going to let anything happen to him or his friends, ever again. Oliver purred. He felt the same way. The very next day, Jenny had a big birthday party at her house. Fagin and the gang were all there, and they promised to visit Oliver all the time. And Jenny told them that treats would always be waiting for them. The little orphan kitten was very happy. He had finally found a home and many good friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Reading with Isa.